All right, welcome back everybody to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and the Tamiya 1/35 scale Sdkfz 250/3 Greif buddy build with Jim at Shutter Ace. So last time I left off with the final assembly, the fuel cans, the frame antenna, some detail parts up here. So basically, construction is done with the exception of the machine guns and another added part that I'm going to paint separately. And then, of course, some stowage items. But with all of that complete, it's time to paint this thing, because all the actual steps are done except for the figures. Now, speaking of figures, I've cut off the first one, and I think this one is figure C. I've cut him off of the sprue and got him all cleaned up. And you know, these are old molds, but you know, I gotta say, they're not, I mean, people complain about, you know, how horrible these older Tamiya figures are, and you know, honestly, I mean, especially for as old as they are, they're not bad. I mean, they have some good detail. They have pretty good, you know, definition in the you know, the detail of the you know, uniform, and you know, all that stuff, you know, where the, and I, you know, I'm sure not all of the Tamiya figures from this time period are this good. And yes, I'm saying good because I find really no complaints here. The detail is good. You can do a decent job painting them if you have the skills, which is something I'm working on. But they really do have good detail. You know, the folds in the pockets, the buttons, the belt, you know, they really actually are not bad at all. So even in comparison to some newer figures, I got a mini art set not too long ago that I really like, and I used one of them, but you know, there's still flash, there's still mold seam lines, and the detail is good. But yeah, I don't know what I'm saying here. I'm saying these figures are going to work just fine. That's what I'm saying. So there you go. But we'll wait on them. I just wanted to show you that I actually have started working on those. But first thing I need to do is I need to put some primer on this. So I'm going to get all my equipment ready here, and gets the primer out and get ready to throw down. All right, while the primer's drying, I figured I'd take a look at these figures, and I've already got them all cut out and cleaned up for the most part. I need to put primer on them, but I need to be able to get them in there, glue them together, and pose them. But I've got them pretty much cleaned up, I think. They look pretty good, just, you know, without having primer on them to check. But the Rommel figure, you have two different things you can do. You can either have him with one arm behind his back, like, oh, I haven't cleaned that arm up yet. You can have one arm behind his back and one arm resting on the side of the vehicle or whatever. Or you can have, I didn't cut the other arm off, you can have both arms behind him like this, kind of crossed in the back. I opted to do this just because I want his arm up and resting on the thing. But one of the things, and it is kind of weird, but not too bad, is the fact that the back of his trench coat is molded as a separate piece. Now, I've seen people say, why in the world would they do that? It's dumb, blah, 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 blah. And I kind of understand why they did it, because I did a, let's see, it was the 88 millimeter anti-aircraft gun with a big crew, and one of the figures was a motorcycle rider, and he had one of the trench coats on that they would use, but it was just solid on the bottom with feet sticking out. Now when somebody's like, when you got a 1/35 scale figure standing like this, nobody's going to be looking up their jacket, at least I would hope not. So, I don't know, was it really necessary to do it like this? I don't know, maybe it was just because of the thick, you know, the amount of plastic, maybe it would create, you know, sink marks or whatever, but regardless, it's got to be dealt with. And one thing I did, because in putting this together like this, there was a pretty sizable gap between the tail of his coat and the strap on the back, and I didn't want to have to use a lot of filler and then try and, you know, get the detail and all that kind of stuff. So what I did is, using my knife, because this is pretty thick, I just trimmed like this along, following the contour without getting it into the actual outside surface, just trying to kind of thin it down to where there's not such a big thick piece of plastic right there. And by doing that, as you can see, it fits together a lot better there. So the only thing I have to deal with is the seam along the sides, which won't be as bad. I can use some combination of just using a lot of cement and squeezing it together and having that fill in, and then from there I can use some sprue goo, fill that in, and then just scrape it or sand it down and try and get the contours back. Now another, you know, bit of weirdness is this side matches together pretty well. I mean, they'll still need some filler, probably from behind, to fill that in and then just smooth. But this side here, it kind of curls up, and this hangs down a little bit further. And not really knowing how one of these coats is put together, I'm going to have to assume that that should be flush, so I'll have to do a little bit of filling there as well. So I'm going to glue this dude together, make sure one side is really lined up, and the other side, yeah, see, there's quite a bit of, that's not too bad, but it's going to take a little bit of work to get that all cleaned up. So I think what I'll do is I will start gluing this together and hopefully not get a big old fat thumbprint on it or anything, and maybe just even it out as good as possible. That way I only have a little bit to take off, and then I'll have to use a file or a sander and try and keep those contours of the folds of the leather or whatever this is supposed to be. So, all right, now that the primer is dry, it's time to do a little bit of paint. A little bit of paint. So we're going to use the German Gray XF63 again. And as you've seen me, hopefully, if you've been watching this series, you've seen me paint it, so I'm not going to do it on camera because it's not necessary. And I don't want to take up too much time because my videos are getting obscenely long. So I'm going to do this off camera. We'll come back when it's done, take a look. Okay, so I've got the gray XF63 German Gray sprayed on, and a coat of hairspray. So now I'm ready to start with the camo color, which is my special mix of RAL 8000. So what I need to do is take a look at the instructions here. and see how it needs to be painted. So one thing I like about the Tamiya instructions, even on the old ones, it gives you a really good idea of where the colors need to go. And they kind of match, like this streak right here matches this streak that you can see from the front. You know, sometimes I built a kit recently that had a camo pattern, and the stuff on the side didn't match the stuff on the top. And that can make it kind of hard, especially if you're not used to doing, you know, camouflage. So anyway, I'm going to mix up a fresh batch of paint. Whoa, I'm going to mix up a fresh batch of paint. Man, I almost broke that thing off. That was close. Fresh batch paint, and get ready to start spraying this. Alright, so if you watch my channel much, you know that for camouflage and for tight work, I like to use my Neo for Iwata TRN1 trigger type airbrush, because it gives me a lot better control. I'm not very adept at using, that's weird, the regular button that you pull back. I just don't have the awesome dexterity I had at one time, so this is what I use now, and I really like it because you can get some really good tight camouflage patterns with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking this and I'm going to clip it to my the back of my workstation here. Make sure this is shooked up really well. It's already pre-thinned, it's ready to go. And really digging this. So let's drop a little bit in here. I'm not going to do all the camouflage because, you know, again, I want to do my best not to bore you with repetitiveness. But, and I tell everybody, these little bottles here, I got like 50 of them or something like that on Amazon for really super cheap. I don't remember how much it was, and these work really good. As a matter of fact, I like these better than the Vallejo ones. The Vallejo ones, or those type, because I have some that are like generic, but it's the same type as the Vallejo, but they hold more paint, but they just don't seem to seal as well. When you shake your paint up, you get a lot of paint spillage coming out of the top, whereas you don't with these. It's like the little pin inside that plugs that hole. It's a little bit better, and I haven't had any of them split yet like I have with the Vallejo. So if you like mixing your own paints, these are pretty cool. And I've got some paints in here. This is from my Edward. That's been in there a couple of months. I've got some other ones, you know, it's the other brand. But these have been in here for a couple of years and they're still good. So, you know, just some food for thought there. If you like to mix your own paint. Let us begin. Alright, so we got to put a lot of paint on here. So let's start on, let's do this side here because this is the side, let's start on the back. Get a feel for this. So I'm mainly going to be putting paint on most everything and just leaving some spots free. Another thing I like about this airbrush is I can get in really, really tight, and the chance of overspray is minimal. So I'll try and do a little bit of this on camera so you can see what I'm doing. Basically just following the illustration on the side, just using parts and features on the vehicle to determine where the paint goes. As closely as possible, because sometimes the illustration doesn't match the kit exactly, but we'll get it as close as we can. Okay. And I like working just like on one, you know, like I did the back, doing the side. I'll do the other side, then I'll work on the front and then the top. It's generally the way I do it for camouflage stuff. Now, as you can see, when I'm spraying this camouflage pattern on, I'm spraying it that way so any overspray goes flying off into oblivion, not onto the actual vehicle. Especially on the top edge there. Then I can come in and get in real close. Make it a little more opaque. Because basically the whole front end of this side is solid yellow. I'll come back and I'll paint the lens on that. Rearview mirror. One nice thing is this spraying this camo takes very little paint. In worst case scenario, if you got, you know, some of the yellow where you didn't want it, you just come back to the gray on top of it. It might mess up your, if you're wanting to do any chipping or anything like that, it might mess that up, but at least you could salvage it. That's basically what I'm doing right now. Alright, and here it is. All camouflaged up and ready to go with the next step. So I gotta let that dry a bit and then I can start with doing some chipping on it. So we'll see what happens here. Actually, Probably actually need to get the decals on it. No, I'm doing the chipping first. Just have to make sure I chip kind of around where the decals go, because I don't want it to look dumb like they painted over chipped stuff. So let's let that dry for a bit. So some of you may have been wondering where the wheels are. Well, here they are. I totally forgot about them in their little storage containers. So now I got to prime and paint those. So I'm gonna do that real quick like. Again, I'm not going to show the whole process, but I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to paint, I'm going to prime them, then I'll paint them the gray, then I'll paint them with the, actually I'm going to prime it, I'll paint the tire part, then I'll mask them off, I'll paint the gray, hairspray, and then my camouflage color. So, those will be ready to roll here in a little bit. All right, while those wheels are drying, I need to start working on these tracks before I start. What I want to do is I want to do my detail painting and stuff before I start with the chipping. So I'm going to start with the tracks, and I'm going to paint them a steel color. Remember, this is just primer. It's not supposed to simulate rust or anything weird like that, but I need to paint them a steel color, and then from there I'll do rust and dust and all that kind of stuff. But I got to do this first, and then I got to paint the I need to paint the rubber shoes black, and so that'll be all ready, and then I can, you know, start adding rust and dust and all that kind of stuff. Now the steel color I'm using is Vallejo acrylic metal color airbrush colors steel, because they're really nice for brush painting because they are pre-thinned and they have enough pigment in them that they work really well. Now I'm going to be really careful, as careful as I can be, but I'm not going to sweat it too much, because being a desert vehicle, this thing's going to be chock full of dust on these tracks, and I'm not using that as a cop-out for not doing a good paint job. It's just that I don't have to be as careful as I normally would. All right, so I've got the tracks are all painted, the metal and the rubber, so that's ready to go. All the camouflage done on that. So I'm working on the wheels, and I did the primer first, which was the red brown, and now it's, you know, covered up by the let's see what color I used. This is a new one, just now tried it. Tamiya black rubber XF85, and I really dig it. It's really cool. I like it better than what I used to use, which was NATO brown. So the next thing I need to do is cut some masks so I can spray the inside gray, and then this part here, the desert camo RAL 8000 on top of that. And the way I cut my masks is I use this deal right here. So I measure the rim size, and in this case it's about 15 millimeters. So I'm starting out with 7 millimeters here to make my mask, and I'll try it first and make sure that it is the right size. And all I do is just do this right here. I've talked about this particular tool before, and it is pretty awesome, and it cuts this stuff really well, and it's cheap masking, because you can just use regular painter's tape or whatever. So let's peel it off of here and see if it's the right size. which generally the first time around it's not. And I didn't cut all the way through there, so let's see. There we go. So let's try it. It looks kind of small, but yeah, it's too small. So anyway, you see how I do it. So I'm going to mess with the size a little bit and get the right size, and then we can tape this thing up. All right, so now is the time to try and chip some of this stuff up and hope that it works. Now, in thinking about it, I don't remember if I put hairspray, if I did hairspray on this stuff down here. So I'm not sure this is going to chip, but we're going to find out. Got me a kind of a stiff brush here because, especially if, you know, down here, we'll see if it's going to chip up. This up here should be fine. Well, I'm letting that water soak for a second. I got the gray and the hairspray on these. I need to let them dry a little bit so I can do the paint. Got it on there. I also took this time to do the helmets. I painted those gray and then shot some hairspray on them, so that way whenever I paint them the Africa Core color, I can chip those up as well. I really don't think I did hairspray down here. I may have to do something different. Yeah, I don't remember if I even painted those gray or if I just painted them the right color out of the gate. No, I'll have to mess with that. I'll have to do something else. I mean, it's going to be super dusty anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So let's start right here with some chipping. See what happens. Okay, so it's starting to break loose, and as you can see, it is working pretty good because I really want to get this thing kind of roughed up looking. I want it to be really beaten. From the stuff I've read, the African campaign could be really hard on vehicles and equipment, and because of that, there was a lot of chipping and abrasion of paint and everything else. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish here, and I think this is going to turn out pretty good. I think it's going to turn out the way I want, because, you know, I would assume that this paint stuff wouldn't have been, I mean, I'm sure they did as good a job as, you know, they could or whatever, but I'm not thinking that they would spend a whole lot of time making sure it was a really thick coat and really clean to begin with. I would think that it would be hastily applied on top of whatever dirt and dust there was. Not a totally clean paint job. So that's kind of what I'm going for here. Now, whether that's right or not, I have no idea of knowing, and nobody else does either. So I think I'm pretty safe in approaching it this way. Oh yeah, see, that's good. That's what I like. So this is working pretty good. I'm digging it. So I'm going to continue to work on this off camera so as not to bore you into oblivion, and come back in a little bit when I've got a little bit more done. Okay, so I finished up with the chipping. As you can see here, it's chipped all over tarnation and back, and I didn't hairspray this stuff before I did it, so I'm gonna have to do something else. I'm gonna have to do some brush or sponge chipping on there, which is not my most favorite thing. Wouldn't want to do that normally, but I'm gonna have to, so I'll do that. Then I think I will paint the detail stuff, and then I will have to install my well, after I do that, I will probably glue the wheels on, chip those up, then I'll give it a clear coat so I can do some decals and then start in with weathering. Alright, real quick, since I've got my RAL 8000 on here, let's take a look at the wheels. Nice. Now I did not do the back because I wouldn't think that the guys having to paint those things would be too concerned with painting the back side of them. Again, pure conjecture on my part. I have no way of knowing if that is the true thing or not. Just trying to use some common sense, of which, you know, it could be argued that I lack sufficient of the aforementioned. Alright, so let's see. Let's take a look at the old axles here. If you'll remember, I covered these up so I could glue these wheels on without too much fuss. And hopefully they will sit flat on the ground. If they don't, it's not too big of a deal because I am going to put this on a base. So let's take a look here. Ah, splendid. They fit nicely. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to glue these on. And for that, I'm going to use this cement here. Maybe. There we go. Now, I think that around this time, unless something weird and miraculous happens, this is where Jim and I will probably deviate quite a bit from one another's in this buddy build, because weathering and stuff like that can be quite quite unique to the individual, and I would say that I'm already off the rails as far as, you know, following the instructions because of the way I do things. Hopefully we won't be too far off, but you know, that's just the nature of different people doing different things. So I'm going to let those wheels dry really well, and I think in the meantime I should probably start painting some of the details. Once it dries also, I'm going to pull that tape off of there. Now some of you may also notice that my fuel cans, the handles aren't very weathered or aren't very chipped or anything, so I'm going to have to do something about that. And I think that may have something to do with the fact that I probably didn't get enough hairspray on there. So, you know, it didn't have enough hairspray underneath to facilitate the hairspray chipping technique. So we'll let that dry for a few minutes, and I'll get these guns prepped to get ready to paint those. So I already did one, so I'm going to demonstrate another helmet. and how dandily the hairspray chipping technique works on something like this. So in reference photos I've seen, any of these desert painted helmets, they're pretty chipped up, assuming they just like threw the yellow paint on there, or you know, whatever color you want to call it, and was easily chipped. So that is what I'm doing here. And man, you can get a nice effect with it, because boy, you can just sure get some differences. This one's a little more chipped than this one. Don't want to overdo it because I don't want it to be out of scale looking, but it sure works good on something like this. And it works very easily. Also, something to keep in mind is the sooner you do your chipping, at least with Tamiya paint, the sooner you do your chipping after you've painted it and it's had time to cure a bit, dry a bit, the better it works. Just seems it's a little more porous when it's only dried for a little while, because I found out the hard way, if you let it sit too long, you're out of luck. There ain't no chipping gonna happen. Alright, so I've got the machine guns painted, they're ready to go. I've got the gun shield chipped. So next thing I want to do is I want to peel this tape off of here and see how it looks, and hopefully I didn't get any paint on the inside, which did look like I did. That's pretty good paint, a pretty good masking job, if I do say so myself. Trick is to hopefully not break anything peeling this tape off. Alright, sweet. So it left the interior intact. So good there. So I'm digging it. Looks pretty cool. Yeah, I like that. That'll work. Okay, so the next thing I need to do, I need to chip these wheels up a little bit. So let me get some clean water. So I got my clean water and I demonstrated how I was doing this, but since my phone decided to tell me that I didn't have my location function on so I could know where I was or whatever it is, it didn't work. So anyway, it's very easy. Just hit around the outside edges there and there. So yeah, that makes me sad. You know what though, but I am going to do one more thing. I think I'm going to chip along the edge of these doors here a little bit more. I don't like just that streak down the middle. So let's see if I can get that to chip some. I mainly just want to chip the edge of the doors there. like that. There we go. Don't want to do much, just a little bit to kind of offset that center. I maybe overdid that a little bit. Hopefully when I do some washes, it'll bring that seam down the middle out a little bit more. So I think that's good. So now I'm gonna let that dry and then we'll do a clear coat. Okay, so I got it sprayed with a semi-gloss, so now I can let that dry for a bit. I used Model Master Acryl semi-gloss to put a protective layer on it. And part of the reason I did that is when I do the decals, I don't want the water from the decals activating the layer underneath of hairspray. So this has had a chance to dry, so I can do a little bit of detail painting, for instance the tools and this stuff here. So let me decide what I'm gonna do. Alright, so the color of this fabric wrapped item, this here and this here, are supposed to be buff. Probably before I get these items glued on there, I need to get them cleaned up and ready to paint. Alright, so the instructions call for these tarp things to be painted buff, so that is exactly what I'm doing. I'm using Buff XF57. I'm going to spray it on there. As you can see, I already primed it. Alright, so I've got these painted. Now I need to paint some of the remaining details. Now, part of the problem is some of this stuff, I don't even know what it is. So I'm having to kind of guess. And one of those things are these stick things right there. I don't even know what those things are. I'm assuming they're made out of wood. So I shall paint them accordingly. So I need to paint those. I need to paint the handle of the sledgehammer, the handle of the pick, and the handle of the shovel. So I'm going to do that with tan earth, which is a color I generally use. Well, you know what? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint it using sand brown, which is kind of a dark wood color. That means I won't have to mess with thinning it either, because the weathering is really going to take care of a lot of that anyway. So let's get it some paint on here. If I don't like it, I'll just paint over it. That's one of the bummers about molded on detail. It's a little harder to paint, and if you wanted to paint it off of the vehicle, yeah, you can't do it. But that's okay because it keeps the painting skills sharp. Which is a good skill to have. Hopefully my noggin's not getting in the way. Okay, let's get this here. In an earlier video, the end of, I can't remember what episode it was, but it was maybe episode 3. Jim Deck, Mr. Shutter Ace extraordinaire, he talks a little bit about painting and how to hold your wrists and all that kind of stuff. It is pretty important that you brace your hand and whatever you're painting well, so you can do it without too much jumping around. That's why it's hard to video. He was mentioning that he was having a hard time shooting the video and painting because because his camera angle, where he had to have his camera, it was awkward, and I've had the same problem. That's why I changed to this current camera setup and angle, because it makes it a lot easier to paint this stuff when you can hold it correctly, yet be able to allow people to see what you're doing. I mean, sometimes you'll see me, depending on what I'm painting, I'll tint my fingers and force them against each other to keep them from shaking, to give a stable platform. So that's just a little pointer if you're a beginner watching this mess, and not to say that, you know, I'm an expert or anything, but it is a good tip. So there's that. Almost forgot I need to paint the wood on this here, this part. And as I suspected, it is a tripod of some kind. Now my guess is that it's for, in the 40s they hadn't developed selfie sticks yet, so they used tripods to do selfies and stuff. And you know, Rommel being quite a popular dude, he wanted to keep up with his selfies and stuff on social media, so he had to use an antiquated tripod. That's what this is. Just as a quick disclaimer before anybody gets all crazy, that's a stab at humor. I know it's a tripod, but I have no idea what exactly it's a tripod for. I would assume for like a spotting scope, or one of those artillery type scope things. I don't know. If anybody knows, write it down below. in the comments, because I'd sure like to know what it is exactly. But I think it's for like spotting type, observation type equipment. I feel pretty good about that. This particular brush I'm using right here isn't the best for painting anything, but especially when I'm having to paint all sideways like this, it's not really the best, but you can get the job done. It's kind of rough, but that'll do it. Alright, so now I got a steel color here, and why I'm painting this I don't know, because it's going to be under the tarp that gets glued on here, but I'm doing it anyway. Again, sometimes I like to do these things even though you're not going to see it, because it's good for practice. Other times I have no desire to do it. This time I do. And then we have this crank-like tool here. Now this one I need to be careful because I don't want it to. The nice thing is here is if I get a little bit on the fender, it's not that big a deal because the wash will tighten that up. So we got that, then we need the shovel head and the pick head. Now I'm thinking, I'm hoping that I don't have trouble putting the Greif decal right here, because part of it goes underneath that head, and I didn't really plan that out very well. I should have looked ahead to see where it was located, because I might have some trouble with that, because I don't know if it'll go underneath that head or not. However, we shall see. Worst case scenario, I could get creative and cut a notch out of the decal. Don't really want to do that, but I've done it before, and I'm sure it won't be the last time I have to do something like that. Sometimes you got to get creative. And I'm sorry this is so boring, but this is generally where my videos start to fall apart as far as cohesiveness, is when I'm doing painting, and especially when I'm doing weathering, because I have no set pattern to doing this kind of stuff. I just wing it from kit to kit, and things can get kind of scattered and not as cohesive as the build part of my video. I don't know what that is. God, that's just annoying. I don't know if that's supposed to be silver or metal or not, but right now it's getting painted metal. So we got that. Let's see, I think that's that. So now I need to paint the tips of this tripod here. It's part that pokes down the ground to give it stability, I would assume. Hopefully I'm staying in frame here. I haven't checked in a little bit, so if I'm going out, sorry. Again, painting and weathering is where my videos fall apart. There are some people, for example, Uncle Night Shift. If you haven't checked out his channel, you need to check it out. It is phenomenal. Makes me feel like the amateur that I am, but he's really good at going over the whole painting and weathering process. So is Panzermeister. I've mentioned him before too, but same thing with him. He gets some. He does a really good job talking about his weathering process when he's doing it. You know, some of it has to do with editing and stuff like that. I'm too lazy to get into any heavy-duty editing. It's just pause and resume and stuff like that, but maybe someday. But anyway, those guys have it dialed. Me, yeah, not so much. But it's fun. And apparently there's some people out there crazy enough to watch my channel, so can't be all bad. All right, there's that. All right, I think I can glue these on now. They've dried and been touched up. There's a few seams I had to fix, so I got those fixed. So I want to get these on here and get these sprayed with a bit of semi-gloss as well. That way I can move on to the decals. So let's get this on first, and this goes there like that. Now, it looks kind of flat right now, but I'll get it touched up with some washes and stuff and filter of some kind to just give it a little bit of texture. But that's where that goes. So I think I will use the old handy dandy gel super glue, gel control. And let's see, put a little bit in there. Like that. And then let's see. A little bit there, I think. Like that. I hope I don't stick my finger in it. Well, it fit on there pretty good a while ago. Okay, there it is. Okay, and then this one here fits quite trickily underneath here, hopefully without breaking it. There we go. Goes like that. Kind of drapes over the back a bit like that. It's actually pretty cool. It's amazing what they could do molding these things. So I think what I'm going to do though is I'm only going to glue it there. So I'll put some cement or some super glue right there. And put this in position there. Swing it around. Stick it in place like that. And voila, that's it. Hey, you know what? I just noticed something. I should probably peel that piece of tape off right there. Ha ha! I was wondering why there was a ridge there that wasn't there before. All right, so that's that. Make sure that sits properly. Okay, so there's that. So let that dry up a little bit, and then I'll shoot it with some, well, I'll go ahead and mix up some clear now while that's drying. All right, so now it is time to do the decals. We got the stuff painted buff and all that, so got the details painted. So I tested the decals since they're ancient. I wanted to make sure they worked, and they do probably can't see this here, but I stuck it to this glass, but it came right off. So I should be okay. So I'm going to start with the Greif decal, and I'm going to cut this one pretty close. Because I got to make sure it's going to fit with the pick in place. So you also have to make sure that you get the right one on the right side. Because of the way they bend onto the contours of the side of the vehicle. So let me get this cut out. Alright, so this one goes here. And make sure the reference points are in the right place. So this should be interesting. Yeah, that pick seems to be kind of in the way. So let me see what I'm going to do. Alright, so the pick head seems to be far enough out, so we'll just have to see what happens. So I'm going to stick this in the water, get it soaked real good. It does take a little bit longer for the decals to soak. But this one right here is the one that's going to give me the most trouble. So we'll start with that one, get the hardest one first. Okay, it is loose. So here comes the tense part. So I'm going to get this, put it there like that. Then I'm going to take this and brush this on here. Hopefully I'll be able to slide it around if I need to. And then here we go. You know what? I don't need the tweezers. Let's see. Let's find toothpick. Okay, so there's little marks. There's little marks here and here to help you guide where to put it. They're supposed to be lined up with this edge. So let's see here.
I'm hoping that person on the bike is
there. Okay, that's lined up pretty good. So let's see if it's going to lay down on this part. Looks pretty good, but I think I'm gonna have to cut this so it'll lay flat. Let's see, yeah, because if I don't, it's gonna have that big buckle in it. So let's see if I can do it without destroying the decal. And then I can use a micro saw to get it to really stick. Well, I gotta say I'm pretty stoked. So let's see if I can get it to stick. All right, so now I'm gonna get a Q-tip. Kind of mash the extra fluid out. Well, gotta say, I'm kind of surprised. That went much better than I thought it would. So that's the micro set. So let's get the microsol. Put some of that on there so it can start really settling in. Turn it on its side a little bit more here. Mainly concerned with that seam, that sharp edge right there. So let's let that sit for a bit, see what happens. All right, so it looks like it's going to work just fine, and that was the decal I was concerned about. So I can move on with the rest of them. The other one for this side is a Balkenkreuz. So these are kind of weak sauce. So I'm going to look in my spares and see if I have one the same size it's a little bit better. So in looking in my spares, I found a whole decal set of the Greif decals, a little more yellowed than the one that I got here. So that's kind of weird. Thought you might find that interesting. All right, I've got some decals here from Tamiya Sdkfz 251/9 Ausfrung from 1990. So let's see if those will work, because they're in register a little bit better than these here. I think they might just look a little better. So let's give these a shot and see if they're not too old and decrepit. Okay, so I found some suitable replacements, and now let's put it where it goes. They came off pretty easily, so you gotta hand it to Tamiya. Apparently they make some decals that last pretty well. Alright, well, that looks pretty straight. And whenever I put these things on, I use parts or features of the model for locating them properly. Let's put that on there like that. Let that sit. And then, let's see, we got anything else on that side? No. So, we can move to the other side. We'll do the other side first. And that's going to be this Greif decal and Balkenkreuz without the black in it. Alright, we're good again. The white Greif sticker for this, or sticker, decal for this side looks good as well. So let's throw down with this thing. Again, just gotta, this one's gonna be a lot easier without a okay, let's see if I can do this without tearing this decal. Whoa. Getting crazy here. Hopefully my noggin's not getting in the way. Ooh, too much. Okay, I'm gonna have to cut this again. Hopefully. It won't give me any grief. Whoops. Grief, you like that? Okay, I did move it a little bit and tore just a little bit, but you know what? That's what happens when you get battle damage. I am not going to sweat it. Not gonna sweat it. Okay, roll this one out as well. This one, I may have to, sorry you're not getting much commentary here, I'm concentrating. May have to break out the old Solva set for this one, but we'll see. Try this first. I could probably touch that up with some paint, but we'll see. I may have to trim that little tiny piece right. Oh man, things are getting crazy. This is painful to watch as it is to do. There we go. Put a little bit more on here and let it sit. I may try and touch that up with some paint, but I may not. All right, so let's let that sit for a bit. All right, so that one's in place, letting this micro sol do its business. So The next decal we need to do is I need to do another cross in the back, and I'm supposed to cut part of it off. Because of the rack, so get another one of these. Okay, so this one, Balkenkreuz goes on the door and has to be cut down a little bit because of the jerry can rack. So I guess if a person really paid attention, they could actually put the decal on before the jerry can rack, but you know, you got to pay attention to that kind of stuff, and I didn't. So let's see what we can do here. Alright, so there's that. So let's get this mashed down in place here. So this one is going to take some serious... I think for this one, I'm going to be using my Sdkfz. That is my go-to for the rough stuff. So let's put a little bit on here like this. Whoops. Now, some people say that this can mess up your paint. So far, I haven't had Sdkfz mess up my paint. It just basically, you know, does what it's supposed to. See, it's already starting to really melt that decal in place. That's what I like about Sdkfz. So we'll let that do its thing. As a matter of fact, that looks pretty good. I think I'm going to put some on here too. Been using this stuff for years. And it never fails. Not yet, anyway. Alright, so there's that, and then we need to put the license plate identifier things. So we use the one ending in 36. Got a little crazy, cut off too many of them. So I'll have to make sure I don't lose it in case I ever need one extra. Now this one I'm going to cut really close to the print. Cut as much of the decal film off as I can, so as not to get too much overhanging. So I'm gonna go ahead. You've seen what I'm doing, so I'm gonna go ahead and put those on. Put the last decal on the front, and then we'll come back and see where I am. All right, the last construction thing I need to do on this part here is the bag. Now this is the bag as it comes out of the kit. Now it fits really good where it's supposed to fit, but it totally does not look real at all. Because as you can see, these straps are very thick plastic and they don't even loop around. So as they say, that dog ain't gonna hunt. So what I'm doing is I had a spare one of these from my brother's old kit many years ago, and I'm making my own straps. And the way I'm doing that is using some Tamiya tape, just cutting it to the appropriate width. I super glued it to the back. So then all I have to do is kind of hold it in place here where it goes. And then I can loop it around like this. So that's about the size it needs to be, so then I can just kind of squish that in place like that. Loop it around, see how it looks. So let's see, let's reposition this. Like that. I just need to make sure, whoops, if that's pressed down really good. That's the sticky side, and I'm going to use super glue to make sure it sticks really good. And then for the other side, I'll do the same thing. With another piece, I'll just loop it around there, glue it into position, and then make sure this is glued down really good on the fender. Before I do that, of course, I'll trim this off and just super glue it all into place. And then I'll have myself a decent or realistic strap, because the plastic ones, even though they fit really good, they just don't look good at all. So that is the plan. So I've got the bag all installed, glued in place, and now I just need to paint the straps and the case itself. And I'll recheck the decals and make sure those are all in good shape. And then I'll be really close to being done with the assembly and paint part. Alright, so here it is. I think as far as construction and paint, it's done. Decals all look good. Seem to be settled in really well. Got that bag done. All the detail painting is done. So I think that's pretty much it for this video. So next video, I'll be working on figures, and I will be doing a clear coat on here to get ready for the weathering and all that. So I think that's it. So as always, thanks for watching Plastic Models by Regular Dude and part 9 of the Tamiya 1/35 scale Sdkfz 250/3 Greif buddy build with Jim at Shutter Ace. So be sure and click on the link below to check out his channel and see what he's doing on his Greif model. And we'll see you all next time